California, Oregon, Nevada are very popular states, and for reasons that I don't have time for, the surrogates have a higher base fee. Other parts of the country, and again, the Israeli clients are usually happy to work anywhere in the country because you can save money, but that is a fixed cost that will not change once it's agreed upon by everybody. She'll also receive things like maternity clothing. Obviously, she's pregnant, she's going to need new clothing. That can vary agency to agency, and if it again is a cost that's agreed upon, but often it's $500 for a singleton, $750 or more for a twin pregnancy. Again, she's going to get bigger, she's going to need more clothes. Sorry, okay. And things that can be fixed could be a C-section if she's had a cesarean section before. You know that she's going to have one again, and she gets an additional fee for that because of the pain and suffering that's really what you're paying for even for the pregnancy. You're paying for pain and suffering. You're not paying for the delivery of a baby. Otherwise, and I'm not a lawyer, but it's more considered baby selling. So you're not doing that. You're not buying a baby. You're paying her for her efforts. Other fixed fees that we try and cap, you can cap her lost wages. If she is making a certain, let's say she works as a secretary or something like that, we know that she makes a certain amount. We can predict the average lost wages might be for a certain amount for twins versus singleton. If she's agreeable, we can put a cap on that. But it has to be something that's reasonable, because if she's missing work for you having a baby, she should be compensated for that. She shouldn't be out wages. I'm trying to think other things that are fixed costs. Again, once you know your surrogate, and we know her insurance, which is another topic, but we can predict how much her insurance costs are going to be. There are many things that can be predicted once we know who your surrogate is. But going into this, we don't always know. But there are ways to keep costs down, again, by looking at surrogates in, I shouldn't say they're less popular, but they're not that California, Oregon, Nevada kind of strip along there, where the laws are very good, and you want to look to make sure the laws support what you are. If you're a same-sex couple, are you married? Do you want both names on the birth certificate? Each state has individual laws, so we look to match you.
Are the base compensations for surrogates always the same?
No, they vary state to state. They also vary based on experience. If she's had, it's a raise. If you do a good job, you expect a raise. Same thing with a surrogate. She's done it once before. She's shown that she gets pregnant through this process. She's gone through the contracts. I mean, you're getting a lot. There's a big benefit to this. And so she gets an increase in her base fee. In general, it's usually $5,000 per each time she's been pregnant, but there's variations. Again, this California, Nevada, Oregon can get out of control with that. Sometimes surrogates get an additional fee if she has insurance in place. This can vary surrogate to surrogate if they're asking, but so if you're saving money on insurance and she has it in place, she may ask for an additional bump, maybe $5,000. It's not a standard thing, but this is what you may see with different agencies.
Hey. When you said that the surrogate would get additional payments for a C-section, let's say, can you please explain more about the medical costs of the process versus the payment that you pay to the surrogate herself?
So the surrogate is paid again for her pain and suffering. So all medical costs are not considered part of her compensation. You will have the medical costs of your clinic if you need and you will have a variety of costs that go with that. She's going to possibly need to travel to your clinic unless she lives up the street, which is not that common. She's going to have a partner, possibly have a partner who's also going to have testing done. Some clinics will give you a kind of global figure where it's just that's their fee and they will charge you. Other ones it's piecemeal, like each time you're paying for it. Again, this is very complicated, and I can only imagine everybody's heads are exploding because there's so many variables, but take in whatever little you can and then you can ask questions later or weeks from now, probably from any of the professionals here. So you will have the medical costs of the clinic. You will also have the medical costs for her giving birth, for the pregnancy. And I don't know if we want to get to insurance, because again, this is a big Pandora's box that we're opening when we talk about that. But you will have her obstetrician's costs, you will have insurance costs, you will have the hospital costs when she gives birth, and then you are also going to have the costs for your child who is just born. If your child is born healthy, the costs are not that outrageous. Maybe compared to Israeli costs, they're high, but in the whole scheme of what you're paying, that's not the biggest cost. But if your child has complications, especially with twins or born early, you can often expect some time in the NICU. Doesn't mean your baby's not going to be healthy, but there's time for it to kind of grow and mature. Then the costs are going to get higher with that. And again, this is the insurance question, but your newborn will have their own expenses also, and hopefully low if the baby's born term.
Are there any additional invasive procedures for which the surrogate gets another payment?
That doesn't get it, doesn't, or does get it?
That does.
That does get a payment. So there are a variety of invasive procedures that can occur. It used to be that most people, many couples wanted to do, or individuals wanted to do an amniocentesis, which again is an
בדיקת
invasive.
מי שפיר, אם מישהו לא מכיר את המונח.
It's an invasive procedure, and there is a small risk of miscarriage, so there's a reason not to do it. You've come this far, but there's so many tests now that are able to be done. Most of the clinics are doing PGS or PGD, which is genetic testing, which really reduces the risk of chromosomal abnormalities. And they're also, in place of an amnio, there are things called like maternity 21. There's a variety of names, but it's a blood test that your surrogate can do, and they can determine if your baby has a higher risk of chromosomal abnormalities. If markers come up that says your child is at risk, then you would do an amniocentesis. And then the fee can vary agency to agency. It can be per needle insertion. So if you're doing an amnio and you've got twins, you're going to test each one. So that's 2 needle insertions. Some agency have a flat rate fee. It just depends on the contract of what you're looking for. Again, a C-section is an invasive procedure also. They're cutting. I'm trying to think. There are a lot of tests that they do that are not invasive, and she does not get additional fees. Ultrasounds, things like that are not going to be. And your baby will be looked at as it develops. There's ways to look for downs that measure the thickness of the neck through an ultrasound. She's not paid. There's nothing invasive. But if she has some kind of surgical procedure or the skin is punctured, there is usually some sort of fee.
When does the surrogate start getting her payments? Prior to pregnancy, does she get anything?
So there's a monthly allowance that will be negotiated with your surrogate. It can vary. I've seen it as low as $100 a month. I've seen it as high as $500. But for most, it kind of comes in around $200 a month. It pays for incidentals. It pays for things, even though she may already have the internet, she's going to be using the internet for you. In a way, you're paying for that. You're paying for gas mileage to and from her doctor's appointments. You're paying for her childcare. So let's say it's $200. If she was doing and submitting receipts, it might not come really to $200, but I have to say, if you're submitting receipts, all of a sudden she does charge for things. Maybe she doesn't take her kids to the doctor's appointment because she's got a flat rate, but if you start paying for every child care, maybe she would collect more. But $200 seems to pay for all those monthly expenses, and most surrogates agree to that. One thing that I have not seen my Israeli clients ask for, but sometimes they do, if you want your surrogate to eat organic foods, that usually is additional supplement because that's a more expensive thing to eat. Pregnancy payments start, though, for us at her positive beta, so it has to be above 50, or maybe it's 100, I'm sorry, I can't remember right now, but it has to be at a certain level. And then she also gets paid at heartbeat, and then after that every month that she's pregnant. If she miscarries, she keeps what she has received because, again, it's for pain and suffering. So she's had the pain and suffering of carrying for a certain period of time, so she would keep those fees.
And she also gets some initial fees for when she starts injectable medications and for the embryo transfer itself.
This can depend on your agency. Some agencies do not charge for start of medication, but if the cycle is canceled, so if she started injecting medication, you may not pay. It depends on how your contract is structured, but if the cycle's canceled and she started her injectables, she will receive a certain amount of money. She also receives money for her embryo transfer. And again, agency by agency, these cover different things. So I can speak for my own agency is that this would cover her childcare costs, the pain and suffering, lost wages, things like that. But your travel and things are additional to that.
What about support groups or a psychologist or a social worker? Are there any additional costs to that?
So initially, your surrogate should always be screened by a psychologist for her suitability and for her understanding of the process. These fees also vary. Again, I'm not trying to be evasive by not giving real numbers, but it changes. Some clinics have an in-house psychologist that they ask you to use that can run very high. Different psychologists charge different fees. But you're probably looking at somewhere between $500, and again, I've seen clinics that charge $2,500 for those. I don't believe that any of the clinics that are out here today have in-house psychology programs, so you can ask your agency which one to use. And these are people that do it on a regular basis. I mean, they know what they're looking for. You asked me something else. Psychologist. Oh, support groups. So this also is an agency by agency thing. Each agency can choose what they want. There are no regulations in the United States, so it really is important to pick, I would say, a reputable agency that has a track record that you know is honest. It's an area where dishonesty can happen and you want to protect yourself. So again, somebody that's used it, somebody that maybe, somebody here in Israel has checked out and knows that on a regular basis that this is a reputable company. Support groups can vary. I don't want to talk too much about my agency, but we don't offer support groups because we have found that we asked surrogates would they like it, and they said it was a bit of a bitch fest, that they get together and they're kind of like, well, my intended parents are sending me to Disneyland, and the next one says, mine aren't, and they compare notes, and we decided that wasn't really a productive thing for anybody. So we offer an in-house support group that's run by former surrogates that work for our agency. We also have former surrogates that are kind of their buddy, because I can understand what an intended parent feels like, having been there myself, but I cannot understand what a surrogate does. I think it is really important that your surrogate does have an outlet. Some agencies require or offer monthly psychological counseling sessions. Some don't. Most of the surrogates that are doing this really are happy about what they're doing. They're not looking to, they're not having problems. But you do want to make sure that there is support should she need it. There are therapists for her to talk to, that the agency is involved and making sure at every point that her life is running. I can't say smoothly. Everybody has things that happen. The kids get sick, your car breaks down, but that she's able to address and deal with the problems of life, and that the pregnancy is not getting in the way of those. And if it is, how can we assist her? Should people expect to pay for housekeeping or for childcare some significant sums during the process? It's very case by case. If you have twins, there's more likely that your surrogate's going to stop working sooner if she has a job, and she's going to need more assistance, because if you've ever seen a pregnant woman with twins, they can't drive cars by the end because the steering wheel is too far for them. So often, and I have to say, as somebody that did have a surrogate, at some point, I really don't want her cleaning. I want her relaxing. So it comes at different points for different agencies. Some usually, some as early as 28 weeks, where they might have housekeeping every other week. Some start at 28 weeks, housekeeping every week. Some start later on, every other. As you progress more in the pregnancy, maybe every week. Again, if she is having problems, I strongly advise that you might want to put it in even before the contract says, because you want her relaxed, you want that woman care, especially with twins. My twins were born at 28 weeks, and embarrassingly, she said to me at 27 weeks that she wants to stop working, and I said, give it till 30. I was kind of thinking, a few more weeks, save money, give it till 30. and then you can cut back on work and stop working, and she gave birth at 28 weeks. So I personally wish that I had not, the American expression is a penny wise, a pound foolish. I wish I had spent the money. So that advises me that you should look at the interest of your unborn child. That is really what you're hoping for, and sometimes housekeeping is not the most expensive prospect in this journey. It's, depending where she lives. Again, the states that are more coastal tend to be more expensive, but, I think our maximum is $100 a week for housekeeping, and many of them don't come near that. And the same thing is with childcare. You have these more expensive states to live in, the lost wages will be higher, and the childcare costs will be higher too. They probably average, depending where you are in the country, $5 an hour. In Los Angeles, it could be $25 an hour. It can be very high, but $5, $10 is kind of, and Steve lives in a different part of the country, and he might, but we don't only work, we work with, it's good to look at other states outside of the coastal states because the fees are much more reasonable. But usually halfway through your pregnancy, you can have a much better estimation of what the highs and lows are going to be. You're going to know how many babies you have. You know how much the insurance is. You know what her monthly payments are. It is very easy to make a fairly accurate projection halfway through the pregnancy as to how much more money you're going to need. But when you start out, there's too many variables and unknowns to know the real numbers.
Are there still additional payments after the birth, besides the final payment for the child? Does she still need lost wages, childcare, housekeeping after the birth?
So it's contract by contract. Some people give housekeeping for a week or 2 weeks after birth. She will receive lost wages. If it's a vaginal birth, she'll receive lost wages for 6 weeks usually after birth. And if it's a C-section, she receives lost wages for 8 weeks. There are some surrogates that have disability insurance through their work, so that partially it will be paid for by the state or by the work, but in general, most surrogates do not have this disability insurance, so you will be paying the full amount after their after-tax amount.
Okay. So, Steve, do you have anything to add regarding the payments, reimbursements, and expenses of the surrogate?
My problem isn't going to be being not loud enough. I'll probably be too loud. So the first thing I want everyone to understand, and Catherine has explained it well, this varies from contract to contract. Now, when you enter into the contract with your carrier, you will have an attorney, and she will have an attorney if guidelines are being followed. And your negotiations with the surrogate over all of these elements are carried out in that contract. One of the things you should be aware of as you select your agency is that some agencies feel like they dictate the contract and you have to sign their contract without changes. Or they refer you only to a limited number of attorneys that work more often with the agency than you and will implement the agency's preferences rather than yours. So when you interview agencies, ask them what their policies are. Do they control who you use as an attorney? Do they feel they can dictate certain terms of the contract? And then decide whether you are willing to accept those limitations. In a normal contract, you should be able to decide which things are acceptable to you and which ones aren't. And the more freedom you want, you need to build that into selecting the professionals who represent you. All of these things are variable. They're variable by geography, they're variable by agency, they're variable by surrogate. And the one thing you will find is that even the agencies often don't control the surrogates with whom you're negotiating. I've had many cases where agencies have had candid discussions about surrogates, about what their fees and expenses would be, so that you could select your surrogate with reliance on that, and you get into the contracting process, and all of a sudden, they're changing it, and it's something that surprises you. Either their fee is higher or additional expenses are added. So you need a competent, experienced agency that's willing to be flexible enough to accommodate your needs, and you need an experienced attorney to talk to you about what is and isn't reasonable from your perspective, not the surrogates, not the agencies, and then to enter into a contract that is custom tailored to you.
Also, there are agencies that they have some usual standards for their surrogates, and they explain their surrogates what they should expect when they will be in the process. Let's say they would explain the surrogate, listen, so the usual fee would be between $25,000 to $30,000 for base fee, and you would usually get between $45,000 to $6,000 additional for twins, and you would get $2,000 for a C-section, etc. There are agencies that just leave it up to any surrogate candidate to fill in the blanks. So what would you ask for the base fee? What would you ask for the twins? What would you ask for any other parameter? And then you can end up with a suggested contract, which is much more expensive, because then the surrogate goes on the hunt. She goes online and she checks, so what's customary to have in each and every paragraph, and she chooses the high end on every paragraph. And then when you are working with your attorney and you're trying to lower the costs on some of them, it seems like you are bargaining and you're trying to lower her fees, because she just wasn't prepared in the beginning by her agency what you should expect, and that you shouldn't ask for the highest end of each and every parameter. Okay, and now Steve's part in the discussion, that's the main thing why we have Steve here, is to talk about insurance. So we have insurance for the surrogate, and you would have insurance, hopefully, for the child. Please explain us.
All right. So, insurance is probably the most complicated issue that you will have explained to you. It is also the biggest potential economic risk or loss that you have in the process. A number of you that I've chatted with over the last couple of days may have heard much of this, but I'm going to repeat it because repetition is the key to retention. See, I used to teach high school. I know how this works. And as I tell people, that means I had a socially redeeming job before I became a lawyer. So, insurance, the first thing you have to understand is even if a surrogate has insurance, you will have to pay for some of her medical expenses. And that amount will vary and be different from surrogate to surrogate. Because in the United States, surrogates will have policies through their employers or their husband's employer, or private policies, or policies that they obtain through various means. And each of those groups or individual policies have different terms. So there are three terms that you may not be familiar with in Israel, I'm not sure, but I'll go over them. There are co-pays. Co-pays means a minimum amount that you pay every time the surrogate goes to the doctor. It may be $20 a visit, it may be $30 a visit, but those co-pays are not covered by insurance, and you will be paying them throughout her pregnancy, potentially. The second is a deductible. In the United States, a deductible means you pay cash out of pocket for her health care before the insurance covers one penny. That deductible may be as low as $500 and may be as high as $5,000 for a year. And remember, if her pregnancy spans 2 years, if she gets pregnant in September and delivers in March, you have 2 annual deductibles, so that $500 will be doubled or the $5,000 will be doubled. In some policies, there's an additional annual deductible for the child, so now you have to add that into the possibility. At the beginning of the selection process of your surrogate, in order to calculate the cost of that surrogate to you, you have to have complete and detailed information on how her policy covers her and the child and what the potential exposure is for each calendar year in which they get services. So insurance is something that needs to be evaluated and given to you as part of the matching process, and you need to analyze it and discuss it with an expert before you choose and get connected to your surrogate and have a lot of unexpected expenses. When you start a surrogacy journey, you're going to face 3 different insurance issues. The first is who is paying for the maternity and delivery expenses of your pregnancy. And it's your pregnancy, but it's her body. That can only be covered by a policy on the surrogate. The second is, what if something bad happens to the surrogate during the pregnancy? She has complications, she hemorrhages, the uterus follows the placenta out, she has preeclampsia. If she has hospitalization in her own treatment, that's a separate insurance issue and also can only be covered under a policy on the surrogate. And if the policy excludes surrogacy, it may and will likely also exclude any complications relating to surrogacy. The third insurance issue you have is the newborn coverage of your baby once it's born, while it's in the hospital after birth. And that can only be covered either by a policy on the baby itself or on a policy, is that 10 minutes or is that 2 high fives?
In Israel, 10 is the same as in Minnesota.
Okay, just checking. Well, I was going to go, all right. So the newborn coverage can also be obtained under some circumstances through connection on a legal basis with the surrogate. So the surrogate's insurance policy will have what we call eligible dependency provisions, which means there are members of her family that are eligible for coverage under her policy. Many agencies and many attorneys do not think that that is an acceptable risk to the surrogate. So I want it to be clear that if you enter into an agreement through an agency with a surrogate that agrees to use her policy, you are putting her at risk for collection activity if those bills aren't paid. So many people think that's not appropriate, and yet there are agencies on the East Coast and elsewhere that do that all the time and have had no adverse outcomes, meaning it works, and if it's done correctly, nobody is at risk. So make sure you talk to your agency about what the insurance options are for newborn. Most of the newborn policies that are available came into being after the Affordable Care Act was, Obamacare, was instituted. And if Obamacare goes away, it's unclear how many of those policies will remain. The one thing I can reassure you is before Obamacare ever existed, agencies and attorneys were finding ways to insure newborns successfully, and there will be options to do so even if Obamacare is repealed. But it's a controversial issue. There are many different opinions. You should gather information on both sides of the issue and make sure that you have an enforceable option for newborn coverage, because that's the one cost that can absolutely explode into hundreds of thousands of dollars, particularly if you want twins. How many of you want twins? Raise your hand. Come on. Own up.
Be real.
Everybody's raising their hand. So, and those twins come early and they go in the intensive care unit. So, pardon? Yes. The medical costs related to twins, if they come early and are in the intensive care unit, the special care unit of the hospital, can explode very quickly. If they're in for 3 or 4 weeks, you can have a bill between $300,000 and $500,000 very quickly. And if you don't have adequate insurance, that bill is yours, and you will be very unhappy. So make sure you're talking to someone about what the options are, that they're giving you balanced advice on what the risks are to you and your surrogate. And when you're going into insurance, the last thing I have to say within my 10 minutes is the cheapest way to cover the pregnancy is to find a surrogate who has current insurance that already covers surrogacy. So even without Obamacare, about a third of the policies will cover surrogacy and don't have an exclusion for maternity services. So you can rely on those policies, and because it's the surrogate's own insurance, she's paying those premiums and you don't have to under most agency contracts. So all you have to do is pay the co-pays, deductibles, and out-of-pocket maximum. About a third of the policies in the United States have very clear exclusions that say we're not going to cover surrogate maternity, and those are policies that have to have an option so the surrogate can purchase another plan to cover her, and if she can't, you probably want to look for a different surrogate. In the middle are policies that talk about surrogacy, but they're not real clear about whether they mean we won't cover if you hire a surrogate versus we won't cover if you are a surrogate. And those need interpretation and analysis by an attorney on your behalf, because about half of those will cover and half of those won't. So about 50% of the surrogates in the US will have coverage of their own that will be effective to cover the maternity and delivery and their complications. If you haven't got that, then you need to purchase another policy, and those policies are available peripheral to Obamacare, not in exchange, which means income qualified program, but out of exchange, meaning individual private policies. And if you go that route, you'll pay a little more because you'll pay the monthly premium to purchase that policy, and then you'll pay the co-pays, deductibles, and out-of-pocket maximum. So that's going to be about a $3,000 to $4,000 increase in the amount you pay for insurance. If there isn't such a plan, if her plan doesn't cover and you can't buy an alternative plan, then you have to look at a Lloyd's of London policy, which is a specific surrogacy targeted policy, but under that plan, first you have to put an expense deposit down that essentially will pay for a normal pregnancy and delivery, so you're self-insuring that, and then you pay a $10,000 to $15,000 premium on top of that, so you're up to about $30,000 to cover the complications. And what
Yes,
that
you
is,
heard right. It's $30,000 to keep an insurance. That's just the cost of the insurance.
For a singleton. This is not for twins.
right. And they have limitations and different premiums for singletons versus twins, and that's the most expensive option. Well, I misspeak. The most expensive option is not having insurance and paying for it out of pocket, and you don't want to go there.
אוקיי. עכשיו אנחנו ניתן 5 דקות למיקי אוזן דה פס מעמותת אבות גאים לספר לכם על תוכנית התמיכות של Men Having Babies, על הג'יפאפ.
טוב, שתי חדשות טובות, אחת אני מדבר בעברית, והשנייה זה שאני לא אבקש מכם להוציא כסף ולשלם על שום דבר. נדבר קצת כמה מילים על התוכנית של Men Having Babies, הג'יפאפ, התוכנית הסיוע הפיננסי, שלמעשה מאפשרת באמצעות כל הכנסים הללו שמאורגנים גם פה בארץ וגם בעולם, ובאמצעות אותם ספקים שונים, מרפאות, סוכנויות פונדקאות, משרדי עורכי דין, כל השותפים הללו לתוכנית מאפשרות לנו בתור העמותה והארגון להעניק הנחות משמעותיות למי שנמצא מתאים ועומד בקריטריונים של התוכנית, כאשר למעשה מדובר בהנחות שיכולות לנוע בין 20% לבין, ולהגיע אפילו עד 50% על התשלומים לאותם ספקים. כאשר מדובר בתהליך די פשוט שבו אתם ממלאים טופס בקשה, מצרפים מספר מסמכים, החומר הזה מגיע אליי, אנחנו בוחנים את הבקשות למול הקריטריונים שהארגון קבע, קריטריונים של גיל, של גובה הכנסה, אם יש ילדים לפני, אם יש ילדים קודמים וכדומה, כל הדברים האלה מפורטים באתר של עמותת אבות גאים ובאתר של מנבין בייביז. ובמידה ונמצא שאתם מתאימים ואתם עומדים בכל הקריטריונים, אתם מקבלים מאיתנו למעשה אישור זכאות, שבאמצעותו אתם יכולים לפנות לכל אחד מהספקים שעובדים עם התוכנית, יש מגוון רחב, אם אני לא טועה כבר אנחנו מגיעים ל-50 ספקים שעובדים עם התוכנית. כשאני מדבר על ספקים, זה הכוונה גם מרפאות, סוכנויות, משרדי עורכי דין, בארצות הברית, פה בארץ ובקנדה. ניגשים אליהם, פונים אליהם עם מכתב זכאות ומקבלים את אותה הנחה שאותו ספק התחייב. זה בידיים שלכם, זאת אומרת, אתם יכולים לפנות למי שאתם רוצים, זה לא מוגבל לספק אחד.
אבל כן לפי מכסת הנחות שנתית.
כן, כל ספק כזה יתחייב למכסה מסוימת של הנחות, ובמידה ונותרו הנחות, נותרה מכסה פנויה, תוכלו לקבל את אותה הנחה. כל הנתונים הללו מופיעים בצורה ברורה וגלויה באתר של מנבין בייביז, כולל מספר ההנחות שכל ספק יתחייב. כאשר לתוכנית למעשה יש עוד שלב אחד, אגב, את השלב הראשון של קבלת ההנחות אפשר להגיש בקשה בכל זמן, אין איזשהו דדליין, אין איזשהו מועד מסוים, פשוט ניגשים לאתר וממלאים את הבקשה ומגישים. כאשר לתוכנית יש עוד שלב שמתקיים פעם בשנה, בדרך כלל אנחנו פותחים את השלב הזה בסביבות יוני-יולי, שלשלב הזה אנחנו מזמנים את כל מי שעבר, מי שהגיש בקשה לשלב הראשון של התוכנית, אושר ועומד בקריטריונים, אנחנו מזמנים, זה על פי זימון שלנו בלבד, לקחת חלק בשלב השני, כאשר במסגרת השלב השני, מי שנמצא מתאים, מקבל מהתוכנית, למעשה בונים לו, ארגון מנבין בייביז בונה לו תוכנית פונדקאות מקיפה שכוללת, מחברים אותו למרפאה, מחברים אותו לסוכנות, מה שיכול להוזיל את כל עלויות התהליך בין 60-70% ואפילו יותר. קיימת גם אפשרות לקבל איזשהו מענק כספי צנוע לצורך ביצוע התהליך. כאשר מבחינת מספרים בשנתיים האחרונות קיבלו את השלב השני כ6 זוגות / יחידים בכל שנה. אנחנו עכשיו סוגרים את השלב השני של שנת 2017. מבחינת שלב ראשון בשנת 2015 בערך טיפלנו בכ-35 בקשות. שנת 2016 אנחנו סגרנו אותה בכמעט 100 בקשות לשלב, לקבל את ההנחות, לקבל את השלב הראשון. רוב הפניות לשלב הראשון נמצאות מתאימות, יש אחוז מאוד קטן שאנחנו נאלצים, שלא עומדים בקריטריונים ואנחנו נאלצים לדחות אותם. וזהו, וזה מאפשר איזשהו מרווח שבו אתם יכולים להוזיל בסופו של דבר תהליך שהוא יקר, כולכם הבנתם את זה עד עכשיו, וזה מתאפשר לנו אך ורק באמת במסגרת אותם סוכנויות, אותם ספקים שונים שנותנים לנו את האפשרות הזו להעניק לכם את אותם ההנחות. סדר גודל של $40,000, אפילו לפעמים גם קצת פחות.
אתה יכול לעשות את כל הפונדקאות
משהו כזה, כן. סליחה? במסגרת השלב השני מתבצעת בדיקה יותר מקיפה של היכולת הכלכלית לשני הכיוונים, זאת אומרת, מי שיש לו, מן הסתם, מי שיש לו את היכולת הכלכלית לבצע את תהליך פונדקאות, לא ייתנו לו את השלב השני. מצד שני, גם מי שלא יכול להביא את אותו מינימום נדרש כדי לסיים את התהליך ולא פתאום להתעקע באמצע, גם לא יקבל, כי זה פשוט יהיה מיותר. יש בחינה מאוד מעמיקה של המצב הפיננסי, יש תהליך של ראיון עם עובדת סוציאלית, יש ועדת מענק של Men Having Babies שיושבת, מקבלת את כל הפניות מכל העולם אגב, כן, זה לא מוגבל רק לישראל, ומדרגת את המועמדים לפי הקריטריונים שלהם, ובהתאם אתם מקבלים תשובות. זה נכון, אוקיי. כדי להתחיל, אם הכוונה היא להגיע לשלב השני, אז קודם כל צריך להגיש בקשה לשלב הראשון, לעבור אותו. כמו שאמרתי, בסביבות יוני-יולי אנחנו מתחילים לזמן את המועמדים לשלב השני, מתחיל התהליך, כאשר לקראת סוף השנה מסיימים את כל התהליכי הבדיקה, זה יכול גם קצת לגלוש, למעשה הנה עכשיו התהליך של שנת 2016 הסתיים לפני חודש פחות או יותר, ועדיין יש כמה מקרים שעדיין לא ניתנו תשובות עדיין סופיות, אז ככה שלקראת תחילת השנה מודיעים אם עברת או לא עברת. נכון, אני לא מחליט, אני רק המיישם, אז כמו שאסף אמר, תהיו נחמדים. סליחה? לשלב הראשון? ברגע שאתם מגישים את הבקשה ואתם מצרפים את כל מה שנדרש, אז בהנחה שהכל תקין מבחינת הפרוצדורה, זה בין שבועיים לחודש. אשתדל לעשות את זה כמה שיותר מהר, בכל זאת אני עושה את זה בזמני החופשי בין העבודה שלי לילדים והבית, אבל בדרך כלל אשתדלים לעשות את זה כמה שיותר מהר.
ומכיוון שאסף לא נותן לנו זמן לשאלות מהקהל לגבי הפאנל, אז אנחנו נסיים בזאת ואתם תעברו להרצאה הבאה בתור לגבי הליכי זרוח וכך הלאה. כן, אז